Mhm. Um, and for those of you who don't know, I am Morgan, and the counties I cover are Chippewa, Eau Claire, Jackson, Clark, and Taylor. And my favorite CRP practice is Conner Blue Safe, mostly because it's just different and I love the loop in. Some reasons for management or disturbance would be that in CRP, sometimes it's required by your mid-contract management. And one of the really important times is in the establishment period and following through with that, not just during the establishment period, but throughout the whole contract can be really important. And we'll get into some of the reasons why and some of the different practices that it's good for. Um, One reason is because disturbance in many of these communities is um, they've been they've historically these communities would have seen disturbance, whether it was mowing, grazing, burning in a lot of cases, and the plants are adapted to that. And then in some of your tall grass prairies, to reduce the thatch that's growing there is really important. It helps cut back on the fire hazard and then helps those seeds reach the ground and maintain that prairie. As well as weed control, we know that mowing or burning, even spraying, all of those are good management tools for weed control, depending on what kind of weeds you have. And really, in this situation and most situations, weeds are just something growing where we don't want them to grow. Of course, some trees are good, but not in your prairie. And then when to do management, again, when it's required, your mid-contract management is either required as a mowing or a burning. Typically, those are the most that we see. And then again, an establishment and of weed control. That weed control can be for all different things. Cool season grass, um, for the broadleaf and herbaceous, usually the weed control consists of mowing and spraying. And that's something that I like to make the landowners aware of, that if those weeds start coming up, to hop on that and get a control on it right away, because once they get out of control, it can really be hard to get it back to what you planted. Cool season grass can be a pretty big issue in these prairie plantings, and some of the best ways, there is some grass selective herbicide for that, but burning is a really good tool. If you can burn when the cool season grass is green and your warm season grass has not started growing yet, it works pretty well. And kind of the same thing for trees. Again, there's multiple ways to take care of your trees and get rid of the ones you don't want growing in your grass, or even in your tree plantings if you had things like buckthorn coming up or brushy stuff that you don't want. Mowing, spraying, and there's multiple different treatments like cut stump, depending on the size of the trees. In your native grass plantings, some things you do want to do would be burn. There's a picture of a burn up there, mow or spray, and a lot of this is timing dependent. You can either do um, a spring or fall burn, depending on what your goals are. Most of the time we see burning happen in the spring, and a lot of that's for convenience, but also if your goal is brush control, if you can burn when those trees are starting to leaf out, then it helps set back the trees. Also, just getting rid of some of that thatch so new seeds can hit the ground is beneficial. Um, Mowing usually takes place outside of the nesting period, and that kind of just can set back things. Um, it can give that grass a chance to get cut back and maybe get some sunlight to the ground where it wasn't before. And again, it's kind of just one of those disturbances. And some of these, like a burn or a spray, can even take place outside and should take place outside of that mid-contract management if the landowner is willing to do it or if you have weeds coming up. A couple things I like to really make sure that people know is these native plantings are not a plant and walk away. In some cases, they'll just take care of themselves, but if there's weeds or trees coming in, they really need to keep an eye on it and take care of that when they can. And some people always want to mow or burn every year because they like the look of it or they think it's fun. And that really just kind of defeats the purpose of these plantings. There's no winter cover then. And the use of wrong herbicide, I don't necessarily make those recommendations for people, but I make sure that they know to talk to either their contractor or make sure they know that they need to read their labels. You don't want to be spraying a grass selective herbicide when all you want to grow is grass. Just make sure they know that there's different things out there. Trees, again, in the establishment period, you're going to want to mow. And then really, you can kind of keep up on those mowings between the rows. Really just helps. In the bottom here, you can see that they've mowed and they have these tree tubes here to help those trees get established, and that's really good practice until they're big enough that you can see that they're nice and healthy. In the top, you have a tree planting that there's very few trees still growing in there because there's so much big blue stem, and that could have, this is in year 3, so it's definitely more than just a first or second year that you need to stay up on it. Sometimes pruning is necessary, whether through mid-contract management requirement or because the trees actually need it. And again, that's kind of a good time for people to walk through and look at their trees and make sure they're growing the way they're supposed to be. And just in the tree case, probably talk about it with a forester if they have any questions. Again, planting and walking away is not a very good option for this because you never know what's going to happen. And contractually wise, they're required to keep X amount of trees per acre depending on the practice. And spraying at the wrong times could kill their trees. Again, kind of make sure I like to make sure they're working with their contractor or somebody that can steer them in the right direction. Mm. Oh, I have one more slide. There. And introduced grasses, again, it's not a not necessarily just to set it and forget it. This would probably be the closest practice to that. The cool season grasses tend to be pretty prolific and not allow so many weeds in there. But again, if there's weeds, they need to spray them is usually the best option. Cutting can set them back, but it's not going to kill them. Same with trees. And again, a lot of people want to mow this every year, but that there's not really a purpose to mowing it for every year, as well as again, it defeats the purpose of having that cover there. And that's the end of my slides. If there are any questions.
Oregon, we have the ability to do like spot control during the nesting season with our county committee approval. Do you typically see more weeds that are more commonly problematic where that would be the case where we would want to do some control potentially during nesting season versus outside of it?
There's not a lot that necessarily needs to be taken care of. That one species I know for sure usually blooms during that and needs to be taken care of is wild parsnip. And sometimes some of the thistles, if people are having issues with that, they'll want to mow them off during that nesting period too. And I think that is important to get on top of them when they can. Because if you wait till after the nesting period, that parsnip has already gone to seed and died back for the most part.
Yeah, I would echo the parsnip is the main one that I would be most concerned about. Certainly. And I think sometimes too that clarification of just like people thinking they even though it's there and they need to control it, they just really think they can't get in there during the nesting season. So I think sometimes we could do a better job of just making it clear that if you have this weed problem, there are ways to get, you know, work on them, even if it is inside the nesting season.
Yeah, and it seems like that's not usually an issue. It just is one extra step they need to make FSA aware of before they can get in there and do whatever they want.
I maybe have a question or just like for the group is that I also think that sometimes it seems that folks again are just so scared about going in to their fields during the nesting season to do anything that even some of those cases where it's like spot treatment of brush or where they maybe would be doing hand stuff, is that something that we you guys ever talk to them about, or is that something that we should be kind of making clear? When we're talking a lot about weed pressure, it's always trying to take care of it, but I'd just be curious if anyone has any thoughts on like how you talk to the producers about weed control at the onset of their contracts, I guess.
I mean, I think it's a good thing we should be doing, like, especially in that beginning stages where we're getting producers signed up, is letting them know that they can ask for permission in those windows. So, I mean, hopefully we're doing a good job of that. I think offices sometimes send out like reminder letters throughout the year to kind of let them know of those options. But I think we probably could do a better job sometimes of just kind of letting them know. I've run across some producers who like are so scared of that nesting season, which I mean, better that than the alternative, but
Yeah,
they
right,
won't
right.
even like walk in there. They have this
Yeah.
concept like I can't even walk on it. But yeah, I think communication wise, if we can bring that up right away, and if Pheasants Forever can like mention that on the side, I think all the better.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think it doesn't help too. I feel like sometimes their neighbors tell them like, no, you can't get in there during the nesting season. But again, it's like they're hearing it from their neighbor and not us maybe, and that would help too. So great. Thanks, Maya.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see Rocco's question or statement. Sometimes they get confused about that, and I try to make it pretty obvious that especially during that first year, it is important to mow no matter what time of year it is. I think during the second or third year, it's not like if they don't need to mow, it's okay to let them stay out of there during the nesting season. People get very confused with all the dates, though. I seem to answer those questions a lot.
Yeah, and to be fair, we probably all tell them what they need to hear, and whether they listen is, the
Hmm.
mystery too. But yeah.
Very true. And I think with the comments that are in the chat about producers thinking that they can't mow during establishment, this will be the first year that we actually do have a letter template on the FSA side that tells them that NRCS conducted a status review. Now you're considered established. Now you need to stay out of there because it's nesting season. So hopefully with that letter telling them like now is when we start nesting season restrictions, we can be very like open about in the beginning, like mow as much as you need because you will get a letter saying when to stop mowing, which I think is helpful. Any other questions out there?
Hi, everyone. I have a question just for the whole group. Um, I'm scheduled to present March 19th, but all of us PF staff will be at a gathering and we'll be in Madison without internet that day, so we won't be able to hop on. So I'm wondering, should we make a different day a doubleheader and I can present along with back to back with someone else?
Yeah, I mean, if we can kind of fit in that time slot, we'd be open to that. Or, like if you wanted to do a different Tuesday, because pretty much we always have this Tuesday talk period open, this 2:30 time slot. So otherwise too, if you wanted to pick a different Tuesday, we can make it work.
So even the off Tuesdays, this is
Yep.
every other Tuesday. Okay.
Yep, that slot's kind of always open. So if you want to pick a different one, just let me know and we can get that scheduled.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions out there? All right, well then I will stop recording for today. Thank you, Morgan, and everyone.